We are near the end of 2024 and this year has had it all. Amazing plays, games so close so it came down to a literal coin flip at the highest level of play, and plenty of exciting moments across many tournaments around the world. We are now almost halfway through the 2025 season, and also the halfway mark of the Surging Sparks metagame. Many things have changed after the 5 tournaments held so far in Sacramento, Stuttgart, Perth, Bogota and Toronto, with familiar decks rising to the top, as well as a few other decks going from 0 to hero in the span of a week. Surging Sparks has surprised many of us with the impact it had in the metagame, and might go down as one of the most underrated sets yet until we saw the cards take action. And so in today's video, I will talk about the best decks in the current standard format heading into the next round of tournaments so you can prepare for a successful 2025. Don't forget that you can watch videos 24 hours earlier if you become a channel member by following the link in the description below. This kind of support helps me continue to create content like this, so please consider becoming a channel member if you enjoy the content. The C tier contains a variety of decks that are established archetypes and can be fun to use, but they have struggled to get top tier results consistently in the Surging Sparks metagame to be truly considered a top contender, but they do have the potential to make deep runs. Decks based around aggressive wall Pokemon have always been in a weird spot in metagames due to how polarizing their matchups are. They can easily auto-win some, but have a lot of trouble getting past others. Right now with Regidrago V-Star at the very top of the metagame, and the deck having a lot of versatility in its attacks and offensive options, as well as switching outs and cancelling Cologne, it's hard for any offensive combination of Mimikyu, Cornerstone, Ogerpon, Milotic and Noivern to be successful right now. Chien-Pao EX has tried to have a resurgence in the past few weeks, and at its core, it has the potential to be a top deck with Excalibur's unlimited energy attachments as well as Chien-Pao EX's unlimited damage output. However, when compared one-to-one with other decks that can do the same or better without having to establish a whole stage 2 Pokemon in play to even work at all, the deck comes up short, so I don't have a lot of hope for this deck becoming relevant again anytime soon. Gouging Fire EX on paper seems like a very powerful deck and can take on many of the game's current threats with Flare Blitz. But as usual, it's hard to justify playing this deck when Raging Bolt is extremely similar and also quite simply better by having no damage cap on Bellowing Thunder. Its over-reliance on Magma Base and Jet Energy and 3 energy cost means it's a cool alternative but very inferior option to its more successful and powerful ancient counterpart. Archaludon EX has a very cool ability that synergizes perfectly with its attack and high HP. A lot of the time you will use it to attach energy to yourself in order to continue attacking after healing with a Professor Turo scenario, and immediately having another Archaludon ready to go, or you can also power up an alternate attacker in Dialga V-Star. But with Raging Bolt running rampant in the format, as well as the low damage cap, I don't have a lot of hope for this deck being successful or anything beyond a fun casual deck for now. Pidgeot Control has a very dedicated group of players who really enjoy playing it and figuring out the exact cards to include to counter every potential meta deck. This is done through Pidgeot's Quick Search, which gives you all the control to find the specific piece you need at the right moment to counteract your opponent. However, so far the deck has not been able to surpass Regidrago effectively, and even though one did make it all the way to top 8 at Toronto, the deck has so much ground to cover in this format that I don't think it has what it takes to take down a whole event right now. Counter Gain is the latest addition to the deck, giving it more flexibility, but it just wasn't enough to keep up with the high aggression of the format we are in right now. And of course, we can't forget the good old Ancient Box. Roaring Moon's Vengeance Fletching is a powerful attack that builds up as turns go by, and it can have good price trades with Rulebox Pokemon. However, getting to that point can be difficult, and the deck is inconsistent at times. The new Koraidon is a new powerful attacker for the deck, and these two combined can be very effective in taking on the big basic decks such as Raging Bolt, Miraidon and Roaring Moon, which try to counter Regidrago, but it struggles against the top 2 decks in Regidrago and Charizard. Moving on to the B tier, these decks either were already good or got some significant upgrades and new options in Surging Sparks that have benefited them and thus have become more competitive in the current metagame. All of these can compete and make deep runs at tournaments, and have the potential to win in the right hands. Iron Thorns has now achieved multiple top finishes, so anyone who doesn't take this deck seriously is in for a bad surprise. There are currently very few good abilities on Pokemon that don't have a rule box, so Iron Thorns tends to have an immediate advantage against most top tier decks. However, it is often let down by the heavy reliance of coin flips between Crushing Hammer and Pokemon Catcher, as well as having a low damage output. Despite these hindrances, it's a very threatening deck, and it can run away with games simply by preventing its opponents to play their normal ability reliant strategy. With a few top cuts and other top finishes, this deck is at its best when it's not taken as a serious threat. And next we have Palkia Dusknoir. This combo lets Dusknoir eliminate mana fee from opponents' benches to pave the way for Radiant Greninja or Greninja EX to snipe away at an opponent with no restriction. Or it can help Palkia reach the right amount of damage to 1k an opponent's powerful stage 2 or V-Star that it otherwise wouldn't be able to. The extra damage from Dusknoir is almost too perfect for this deck, and with a wide array of powerful attacks and the possibility to use Pokestop each turn thanks to Night Stretcher's versatility, this deck is very scary to play against and can take down anything in its path when it sets up nicely. However, one of its biggest issues is how frail the deck is to early aggression, and a smart opponent can keep their bench just low enough to keep the damage in check sometimes. Lugia V-Star has one of the best abilities in the game in Arceus Primal Turbo to accelerate up to 4 special energy from the deck each turn to power up crazy powerful attackers like Cinccino or Iron Hands EX. However, setting up in time has always been the deck's biggest issue, and that has held it back from continuing its dominance performance from the Stellar Crown metagame. The deck almost had a standard performance in Toronto again after many decks stopped respecting it and stopped playing Temple of Sinnoh, but overall, the deck has fallen quite a bit from where it was prior to Surging Sparks and is overshadowed by Regidrago V-Star. Miraidon EX might be the deck with the most significant upgrades from Surging Sparks, with Pikachu, Latias and Magneton, all of which help round out the deck into a more consistent archetype that isn't just relying on successful electric generators each turn. However, it still comes up short when compared to other decks based on big basic Pokemon, as Raichu is the only one that can power through the higher HP threats of the format like Regidrago V-Star, Charizard or Dragapult. Raikou and ReZero didn't help it succeed in the Stellar Crown metagame, and despite an impressive start to the Surging Sparks metagame, it doesn't seem like the new cards were enough to help it become a top tier deck once more. Roaring Wind EX is a deck that is very solid and aggressive, can take down anything your opponent sets up with Frenzied Gouging, and has both Professor Star's Vitality and Dark Patch at its disposal, as well as a wide array of powerful backup attackers in Roaring Moon, Petrant, Koraidon and Petrant EX, and a new support option in Latias. This deck will always be viable, but despite getting Latias to support, it remains in the B tier as it hasn't been able to break through the ranks at tournaments to that final stage, though it has come close quite a few times. The grass weakness seems to be a limiting factor for the deck as it struggles against Regidrago V-Star despite the early aggression. Terapagos had very impressive results during the Stellar Crown metagame when combined with Dusknoir, as it can target multiple Pokemon at once and is very consistent thanks to Noctol's ability. Unfortunately though, the deck is very frail to bench damage, which Regidrago threatens at all moments, as well as relying so much on Area Zero. Surging Sparks gave new life to decks like Gholdengo, and in general the deck struggles to deal with anything that has more than its 220 damage cap, and so it hasn't been able to continue its dominance at the top in the Surging Sparks metagame. Pikachu EX gave new life to Lost Box decks. Pikachu is a perfect inclusion since Mirage Kid can cover the energy cost of Topaz Bolt, and the Resolute Heart ability means Pikachu EX is very resilient in the super aggressive metagame. 300 damage is a great number for Lost Box players to have access to in order to combat the popular Regidrago decks. However, Lost Box as an archetype is still in trouble due to the existence of Regidrago, Dragapult and Lugia, so despite gaining a powerful attacker and being a lot more played in the Surging Sparks metagame, it hasn't lived up to expectations so far. And now it's time to talk about the A tier. The decks in this tier are some of the most powerful and have more than proven themselves in the Surging Sparks metagame with good results in the last major events as well as being quite popular overall. Cloth decks almost came out of nowhere in Surging Sparks, but Precious Trolley was such a welcome card for the deck as when combined with Terapagos and ReZero, this card lets you just immediately bench all the support Pokemon you need, both for setup as well as the poison package of Brute Bonnet and Radiant Sneasler in order to hit for a lot of damage since the very first turn. The deck went from 0 to hero within the span of a week, and it is now considered one of the top contenders in the metagame, with the fear of getting donked by this deck instilled in the back of every player's mind. Gardevoir continues to be a force to be reckoned with thanks to the powerful Drifloon and Screamtail in combination with Munkidori. Kirlia's refinement ability is more than enough to get the deck going, and even though all the damage spread and bench damaging attacks have made its life a bit harder than usual as of late, that hasn't stopped Gardevoir from getting good results in the Surging Sparks metagame, and many players have shown that even the slower versions of the deck can be successful right now. Dragapult seems to have finally found its ideal partner in Iron Thorns, as it can slow things down just enough to get set up and have enough backup for the whole game. Phantom Dive is incredibly powerful, but it's also difficult to power up and get going. But initialization brings the game to a much slower pace against most top decks, which allows Dragapult to set up. This deck existed during the Stellar Crown era, but it was Precious Trolley that finally gave this deck the push it needed to succeed at the top. and it is now the most popular and successful Dragapult version of the deck as of today. Goldengo surpassed all initial expectations with new inclusions such as Togekiss and the new Energy Surge Pro A-Spec, which gives it a huge burst of damage early on, surprising everyone by getting top 4 in Sacramento, followed up by 2 more top 8s in Stuttgart. The deck hasn't done much since then when compared to other decks, but it is still being played in high numbers. The deck is a more serious contender now than it has ever been before, so I expect the deck to continue to be a popular choice amongst players in the second half of the Surging Sparks metagame. Snorlax has been quite successful in the Surging Sparks metagame despite a new difficult matchup in Cloth decks. Its blocking strategy of either preventing retreat or running your opponent out of resources and then setting up the perfect wall with Mimikyu or Cornerstone Ogerpon is extremely powerful, and now Klefki is part of the deck to shut down Petra on DX as well. Despite not having a top 8 conversion in this metagame yet, it is one of the best converting decks from day 1 to day 2, and it remains a powerful threat in this metagame. Raging Bolt is a deck I think nobody would argue against being one of the best and most powerful decks due to the 70 damage multiplier of Bellowing Thunder, which is perfect, and it has Steel Mask Ogerpon as the ideal partner to complement that damage. But it has been declining in popularity in the latest events and hadn't gotten a really good result before Toronto Regionals. With Regidrago's dominance in the metagame, you would think this deck would be doing well too, but it seems as though Alolan Executor was a bigger threat to it than we all expected, and even one of its best matchups has been difficult to overcome. Charizard has been doing better in the Surging Sparks metagame, even though it didn't really get an actual upgrade, and it continues to rely on Dusknoir, Pidgeot and Radiant Charizard. We have an interesting dynamic of a lot of decks resurging such as Miraidon and Roaring Moon, which struggle against Charizard. And even though it is the second best deck both in terms of numbers and results behind Regidrago, there's just no great way to combat that deck, and so as long as Regidrago remains at the top, this deck will likely continue to live in its shadow despite being a very powerful and well-rounded deck. And finally, the S tier of the standard format right now consists of a single deck, Regidrago V-Star. Regidrago has continued to enjoy success after success at the World Championships, thanks to it being one of the most versatile and consistent decks in the format. Able to pivot between powerful spread attacks from Dragapult and Kyurem, high damage output with Haxorus and Giratina, and the brand new Alolan Executor EX and its Swinging Sphin attack. With a perfect array of powerful attackers, as well as maximum consistency and utility cards in the deck to get past any conventional controller locking decks in the format, if you don't know what deck to play right now, the easiest answer will always be Regidrago V-Star, and I can't see anything slowing it down enough in the next set of tournaments in the Surging Sparks metagame. And so, this covers what the Surging Sparks metagame looks like as of the end of 2024, and 5 tournaments with the set having taken place already all over the world. The next stop is Birmingham in the EU region and Rio de Janeiro in the LATAM region, and as always, I will continue to reevaluate and adjust my expectations and opinions as we have more results to see if I might have overestimated or underestimated some decks. I hope this video has been useful for you, and I hope you've had a great 2024 and 2025 is even better. Make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned to this channel for everything Pokemon TCG related, as 2025 promises to have even more exciting moments with brand new and powerful cards coming out soon. For now, I'd love to hear what you think will do well at the upcoming regionals and if there are any surprises left in the Surging Sparks metagame. Thanks for watching, and until next time. If you want to support the channel, you can use code tablemon to get 5% off at Post and Store for your online codes, 10% off for your sealed product at Flipside Gaming, and 10% off on your aluminum accessories at TC Evolutions. Or if you're looking to buy singles or sleeves, you can fill up your cart and close the tab, then click on the affiliate link in the description and check out. That way you can support the channel over at TCG Player, Card Market, and Dragon Shield. ¿Eres de México y necesitas cartas de Pokémon? Busca Hyperbeam Cards en Facebook e Instagram. Y si estás en Tijuana, búscalos en el local C27 en el Centro Comercial Otay.